Welcome to Watercolor Gathering Snowy Moon. This is a painting I had started in a class I was giving, and I really didn't like how the trees came out, nor did I like how the river was kind of looking lopsided. So I decided to rework the whole thing. In order to do that, I scrubbed out a lot of the color from the water. I'm just using a flat brush here with water on it and then a paper towel dabbling up the color so that I could basically start it again. The other thing I had done originally was use some wax resist. So those white spots in the river are wax resist, and some of the white in the trees is also wax resist. So I'm changing this. The original watercolor I had done had a bridge in that background, and I didn't like all of that, the way it looked. So here I am scrubbing it out, ready to start again. And once I had the stuff, the paint off that I didn't want anymore, I wet the background of where the pine trees are in that background, and I added some much more deeper, richer color of Hooker's Green Light and Paynes Gray. And some of the wax resist was still resisting, so there's still a little bit of white in the trees. And I'm going to do that both sides of the painting in the background. And I'm not worried about the wax resist still being there. I will take care of that a bit later in this video. And then underneath those trees I'll be putting a little shadow, more Paynes Gray, just washing it, and then further defining where the snow meets the water with some blue, and then putting in some dark colors in the water for the rocks, and then working on the trees. Lots of trees, lots of branches, takes a long time to do, but just take your time with it. And make sure you start the branches at the trunk and go out and lift so that you have fine branches. The thicker branches I used a round brush, and then I'm using my rigger brush here. And those trees, of course, are in the foreground, so I'm going right over those pine trees. So to sort of define the hills and valleys and shadows in the snow, I'm using a pale mixture of Paynes Gray and Ultramarine Blue. And then I'm going to use the same mixture to create a birch tree just next to that foreground tree. And that's Paynes Gray and Ultramarine Blue again. And some darker Paynes Gray at the base of that. Then I'm using my rigger brush to put in the detail of the birch bark. I have a whole video on that on my YouTube channel under watercolor techniques. And so I'm just using the side of my rigger brush, and then I'll put in some branches for that tree, and those will go behind that maple tree that's in the front. And then I'm going to put some Paynes Grey and ultramarine blue on behind the birch tree. There's a little dip in the snow, and I'm just pulling that up a little bit further just so that differentiates the background from the birch tree. And then I'm starting to put in some scrub, weeds, etc. At the base of the birch tree, just using some Paynes Grey and my rigger brush. And here I am doing the same thing underneath the maple. This time I'm using the side of my brush, and I've mixed a little bit of burnt sienna and sepia just to add a little bit different color. Then I'm further defining that rise and shadow of that snow in that foreground that doesn't catch the moonlight, and then continuing with the scrub underneath those trees. And now the final touch is I'm going to use some white acrylic paint to add some more snow to the trees in the background. Just using a little just to denote the heavy branches hanging down in those trees. And I'm kind of going behind the branches of the two big maple trees. And now I'm going to add the snow to the branches of the maple trees. Not all of them, but the larger ones. And it's difficult to show up if it's a white background, but do the best you can. As you can see, you can start to see those branches pop now that I'm putting the snow on them and going right over those pine trees in the background. And then onto the other maple tree. Just follow those branches right over those pine trees. That sends those pine trees in much further into the background. And put a little bit of snow on the bark of the tree at the top, where there might be some broken branches or ledges. And I'm going to put a little snow on the top of the birch tree. Then we will add some snow to the rocks in the river. And just so you know, the river I wet completely and added ultramarine blue and Paynes Grey with some rocky outcrops and let it just bleed a little. And now I'm using the white acrylic just to add some snow to the tops of those rocks in the river. Use some iridescent medium straight from the bottle on a wet brush, and I'm going to pick up some highlights in the river of the moonshine on the water. It's difficult to see the iridescent medium in a video, but once it's in the light you'll be able to see it. And I'm just going to add a little bit of snow, some iridescent medium to that snow that's in the moonlight, especially on that right hand side. Hope you enjoyed this and hopefully it was helpful. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Leave any comments that you might have below. Thanks a lot for joining me.